campus. So thank you so much for this opportunity, Sagarat sir, and thank you so much, Denis sir, for facilitating all this. So let's just get into what we're going to do for the next 60 minutes or so, right? So I have a content that I brought with me to talk about DevOps in a slight variation to DevOps, DevSecOps. I mean, now there is a next iteration of the DevOps happening, right? So which has, DevOps actually has two angles to it, which is development and operations. And with DevSecOps, it has accumulated the security part of the software development deployment, so to say, life cycle as well. So we'll spend the next 60 minutes to talk about our understanding of what DevSecOps is, how do we go about doing things, and some of the tools maybe that we used to do DevSecOps, and hopefully as I go along, I can kind of recollect some of the problems that we've solved with some of the customers that I've personally worked with and some of the customers that I've consulted with. With that said, right, one way we can make this more useful, more interactive is to make it more interactive. I see there are like, wow, there's like 96 people online listening. I was told that there are like 2 different groups or maybe 3 different groups of attendees there. One happens to be the students of Sacred Heart, and of course, and the other one happens to be the professors from various colleges. Now, what can make the next 35, 40, maybe 50 minutes more useful to me and also to you is by interacting more, by collaborating more. By that I mean, like I said, I have a content, I have a slide deck that we'll go through. But please stop me at any point of time where you think you have a question, or you want me to elaborate, or you may have studied, heard something on the topic of DevOps, not just DevOps, the other topics that we are likely to touch as well, like how does Agile help DevOps? Where does it fit into the world of DevOps? How do we do release management in DevOps? And how do we do automation in DevOps? And how do we do deployment in DevOps? So all of these topics, right? So if you have heard, read, learned anything that you would like me to comment on, please stop me and ask those questions or raise those topics. That way we can have more fun. I can have more fun instead of having just delivering a monologue, and hopefully you can carry something away that you can reflect on, make use of it, right? So with that said, let me just make this a full screen view. I hope you guys still can see my screen. No? Let me see what's going on. Okay, sharing was paused. Okay, can you see my screen now? Yeah, okay, right, let's go. So I have a lot of, there are like 24, 26 slides. I'm going to use only the ones that I think that are more relevant. And again, you can stop me and ask me questions and we'll go through whatever we go through. While we are at it, right? So again, a general discussion, so to say. So what is your opinion of what DevOps is? Can someone help me understand? Just to know the kind of audience that I'm talking to. So in your experience, in your discussions, knowledges, readings, what you've learned or what you have come across to understand DevOps is? Can anyone? What really is DevOps? Is it a tool? Is it a platform? Is it a, you don't have to raise your hands, you can just go ahead. I think they can open the mic and talk, right, sir? Yeah, so I'm told you can open your mic and talk. Archana Balu has raised a hand. You can go ahead, Archana. She's not able to hear my voice. Archana, looks like it's a problem for you. The rest of the guys can hear my voice, right? Yeah. So with that said, anyone who can say what, in your opinion, DevOps is? So like I was saying, is there a tool? Is there a platform? Is it a suite of tools? Is there a some kind of a SDK? What is DevOps? Okay. All right. So maybe I'll tools. Someone said tools. Excellent. Thank you so much for the response. You can speak up, guys. It's really deafening to just me speaking in a room all by myself. So somebody said it's tools. Anyone else? Yeah, go on. I see two of you raising hands. Okay. So DevOps is essentially a process. It's an idea, right? So DevOps is essentially an approach where it kind of helps us to figure out how a team can take their software to production faster, how they can reduce the problems in the software faster, and essentially how it can help the teams to collaborate more, right? Now, when we say this, so why DevOps, right? So DevOps is actually, I mean, I think I would assume pretty much most of you are aware of this. So DevOps is essentially developer and operations. So these are two groups. So in a typical software development world, I mean, in most parts, it's still like that. That is, you have a group of people who are developers, architects, database guys, testers, and they sit and visualize what the software is based off of the information that they may have collected from different methods of requirement gathering, which could be interviews, documents, discussions, whiteboardings, and whatnot. And they create a design, they develop it, they ship it. And who do they ship it? When I say shipping, it goes to a group of people who are called operations group. I mean, these are essentially aliases to the test to the users. So again, users have different meaning in different contexts, right? For an application like an e-commerce, users are people who are like common people like you and I, who are outside the firm, who are not part of any of the development processes. They consume the product. They use it to order something, or in some places they use to buy a car, to sunglasses, to clothes, to insurances and stuff like that, or like Facebook or Gmail. So these are essentially the B2C type products, right? So there is one type of user who are not part of your organization, like again, the banking system products, like some people who deposit money, they withdraw it, they do transfers and whatnot. So these are users essentially who are not part of the development process, so to say. They are outside the system. System, by that I mean the system which develops and delivers the product. And the operations group is someone who does the alias work for them. So what do? They, in a room, sit together based off of research, knowledge, and whatnot. They design, or they product design what would an end user like, what would an end user feel comfortable to use, what flow would be the easiest for an end user be, right? So this is the group which decides what goes into the production. It's not even the one who designs from the architecture standpoint, not the one who designs what the UI should look like, not the ones who develop it or test it. These are the people that in the world of software, we call them as operations group or ops group. So when do they come into the system to touch the software? Pretty much at the end of the cycle, right? Even in the advent of Agile, wherein every iteration, I mean, we kind of break the product into a smallest unit, smallest usable unit, right? That's how Agile is defined, right? Tomorrow you're going to have a session on Agile, and I'm sure Willett will do he'll cover more into it. So even in the world of Agile, the role operations play is very fag-end. Due to the nature of or due to the complexities involved in building a software. If you think of a complex software, especially some of the architectures that we have in recent times that have like microservices that rely on clouds, some parts don't rely on clouds, some parts use a typical conventional RDBMS system, some parts use data warehouse. So it's a cluster of mess, to say the least, right? So when you think of a very complex software architecture, eventually when it gets to a place when an ops guy can come and take a look at it and make some sense out of it, by sense I mean how would a user take a look at the software, it's way too late. And the differences in what he says, what the system should be, and that by the time he or she gets the software to test it out to make sure what was the requirement that was given to the developer in the first place and what he got to test, there's a huge gap. So there's a lot of funny anagrams going around when it says what was meant to be developed and what eventually got developed, right? So this problem is still there even in the most modern Agile worlds, right? Now, after a ton of research, what was research and practices and stuff like that, that's how the DevOps came into practice, right? DevOps essentially gives us a number of tools, framework, approach, guidelines, which can improve the collaboration between the developers and operations, so that one, the time to market the product reduces, and two, the surprises that the operations team gets by the time they touch the software is reduced. So that's all DevOps is. Now, again, with the modern technologies in terms of Web 2.0, Web 3.0, and so on and so forth, security becomes even more important, and hence now we are talking about DevSecOps, development, security, and operations. These three things go hand in hand, and how it goes hand in hand. So nevertheless, there's so much going on in this slide. I just tried explaining pretty much at the heart of what DevOps is, DevSecOps is, and we'll probably go directly to the tools part as to how we, just to do a quick time check. To what are the different things that are involved in it, and how do we go about doing this? We'll just probably take a look at a snapshot of the different areas in the DevOps and also the tools that are deployed there, right? So Um, I mean, if maybe this is what I was talking about so far, where we talked about the agile development, which is about how do you define a software, how do you develop it, and that's all the agile development does. And from there on, how do you package the software, how do you deploy that? More importantly, how you test it and how you do it so fast and accurate. That's where we talk about the continuous integration and continuous deployment. And the operations team comes in once the deployment happens, right? So now the CI/CD, so to say, the continuous integration, continuous deployment, it includes the feedback loop that comes in from the operations team as well, just to say, all right? So there's a lot of, so I mean, this slides talk about all the challenges that are addressed by DevOps. What problems, thank you. What are the common problems that you see in a conventional team, and how DevOps as an approach tries to solve this? So some of the common, I'll just quickly run through it. I'm not going to go through each details. And again, if any of you have any questions, please stop me and you can ask. There is no uniform way to track requirements. Guess what? It happens even in 2021. I've seen some of the clients that I work with, some of the clients that I consult with. There is no one formal way of documenting the requirements. This can be a problem of too many as well. Like I'm right now working with a client where we do requirement writing in Jira, we do requirement writing in SharePoint, we do requirement writing in still documents and emails, and we write requirements writing on other like Rail and Microsoft Foundation tools. So each team uses, so it is super important to have a way of documenting requirements. So it's not just easy for the developers to make some sense out of it. It is also easy for the operations team to contribute to it, right? So I'm not sure if you guys have heard about behavioral driven development. There's a lot of driven development that you talk about, the data driven developments, the test driven developments, and so on and so forth. So behavior driven development is one of the key approaches. It's again an approach, it's a framework, so to say. This is something that we use wherein we bring on board the operations team, the users who are essentially non-technical people who don't understand how, let's say, Java works or C++ works or C# works, or how a multi-tier architecture works, or a microservices works, or API works, or a file-based interfaces work. They don't know any of it, but we still need to make the requirement writing understandable to the one who understands all of this and develops it, and also the one who is going to ultimately consume it. So that's where the behavioral driven development comes in. So there's a lot of frameworks out there, like JBehave, which is primarily a C# based or a Microsoft platform based framework. And there's also a Cucumber, which is more towards Java and open Java technology based framework. And there are a lot more, there are a few more, and these are some of the most used behavioral driven approaches that helps the requirement writing in a technically implementable way. And with that, we also kind of managed to bring in the TDD as well between that. So that's about requirement writing. Not having unit tests. I'm just jumping topics here again, guys and girls. So please stop me if you want me to expand on anything, or if you want me to talk on any case studies or any of my experiences, or any of my exposures to what we do, right? So not having automated unit tests. This is one of the biggest challenges. Having a developer write a code that tests what he writes. That's essentially the unit tests, right? So there are a lot of tools that we deploy, that we use here, like SonarQube and things like that. And not having having this helps. Some say the percentage of defects that get reduced is to the extent of like 45 to 60% in teams that use unit tests. See, I'm choosing this word teams, not organizations, because not every teams in an organization tend to do unit testing, and we've seen some of the surprising practices in some of the most advanced technology firms or banks that have very advanced technology teams where they don't have unit tests. So manual builds for legacy apps, it's a huge Achilles heel. Manual builds, right? Plain vanilla web is probably some of the low hanging and very easy applications that one can build an automated build, like using a udeploy or any other tools such that are similar to that. But custom products, right, or the products that we buy from vendors. Some of this one example given here, T24. T24 is one of the famous banking products, and like that, there are a lot of products. Like the one that I'm right now dealing with is written by a company called Alpha Systems. It's a huge product, and we don't have an automated way of deploying it. So we are doing a deployment. We are doing a project just to do the deployment of the product for the last 4 or 5 months or so. The only job of the team is to deploy, test. So some of these things are really scary. So and crazy too. So manual builds for legacy and mainframes and databases and SQLs. These are some of the really hard technology product and apps where you have to deploy manually. Manual deployment is a big no-go if someone is looking at doing a DevOps, or if someone is looking at reducing the deployment time, or doing there is no CI/CD, right? The moment you talk about manual deployment, CI or CD goes out of the window. Environments, right? Creating an environment provisioning, so to say, right? This is another huge challenge. So while we develop software, mostly people don't talk about or don't think about environment. This is one of the Achilles heel, so to say. So for a number of reasons, because procurement is a very time consuming and a very stringent process in any firm, because there's so much bureaucracy associated with it. Besides, there is a lot of vetting process, security process before the hardware is procured or the network is set up, and so on and so forth. So this is one of the reasons why cloud is picking up. And if you look at some of the verticals, right, healthcare or retail or banking and financial services is actually one of the least cloud adopted sectors, so to say. And I'm part of financial services, by the way. And there are a number of custom products that we create for them. So it's like we create a cloud on their premise. We convert some of their data centers into a cloud based solution using some of the APIs that are provided by the 3 or 4 very famous cloud service providers. I'm sure you all would know Amazon is one of them, and there's Microsoft, there's Google, and there is PCF. So they provide their APIs that can help us to create and spin up an environment by ourselves. We call that as a private cloud. It's not something that's used by anyone else, but it's exclusively used by some of the firm that it creates. And in some cases, we go to public. Public cloud doesn't mean there is no security. There is a huge emphasis from any of these service providers in terms of security. That's one. That's part of that's one of the 3 legs of the DevSecOps, right? So that's in the public cloud, and we also talk about the hybrid, right? So some of them are in public cloud, some of them are in hybrid, and to make things worse. For a DevOps team, which is supposed to take care of the deployments, some of them are on premise. I was talking to one of my very good friends yesterday, and good luck to them. They are going to finish their UAT this Friday, and they're going to start their deployment. They're going to do imagine this. It's okay. So they're going to do a 3 weeks of deployment window. So it's crazy and it's bizarre, and it's not normal. It's one of the common practices, especially in the world of finances. 3 weeks to deploy a product, and on the 3 weeks, they're going to be deploying their products on their premise, on cloud. And when they talk about the clouds, there's also a private cloud. There's some high extent of public cloud involved as well. And they are deploying a product, SAP, for example, and their own custom code and their databases, their migrations. And so these are some of the challenges and the solutions that DevOps tries to find, right? So, I mean, I think I spoke a lot. At this point, any of you have any questions, any comments? Any of you? Did you guys hear anything useful, anything new? Okay. All right. Let me quickly get to, so how much time do we have, sir? We are 7 o'clock. We are on the time, is it? Okay. So I'll just have one slide. I mean, like I said, I have like 30, 25 something slides. So I'll just talk about the tools, right? So I don't want to disappoint some of you who may wanted to see, what kind of tools do they use. That's mostly what the techies are interested in, not some of these approaches. Approaches are for the senior managers and the designers and architects, right? Anyway, let me just quickly get to the, so I brought a lot of stuff, but we could not. All right, so this is one of the, so to say, right? One of the, this slide talks for itself, right? Again, I hope here, this slide at least kindle some questions, but we'll talk about this. Like I said, this slide talks for itself, but this is one of the typical DevOps architecture, so to say. Not so much an architecture, but it's an idea. I mean, we can pick so many things from here, and we can throw away a lot of things. Not necessarily we need to use everything, and not necessarily we use everything. So from left to right, we use Bitbucket. Bitbucket, I'm sure all of you, or at least most of you, must have heard. This is a version control tool where you can collaborate with fellow developers to write software. And as part of the DevOps, this is one of the super important topics, which is how do you managing your branches, right? How do you managing your application versions? So how do you manage your branch? So which branch goes to which part of the application? So we typically at any point of time would have, from the environment standpoint, 4 or 5 branches. From the application standpoint, as many branches as there are in an application's functionality. At the end of the day, they all get deployed together on Jenkins, or a CA Automatic, or a Bamboo, or any other similar tools which are CI/CD enablers, so to say. Again, going back to the beginning, the idea of how you're going to manage the code, how you're going to create branches, how you're going to create versions, how you're going to manage your PRs. PRs is pull requests, and code reviews is super important, and one of the tools that used a lot, and we use it, I use it, it's Bitbucket. And there are a few others, like I'm forgetting now, the SVNs of the world and things like that. Bitbucket now, I'm not sure if you guys have followed the product. I'm not sure how many of you use it either. So we've been using Jenkins to do the build creation, deployment, and so on and so forth. But now Bitbucket Bitbucket has Bitbucket in itself has expanded that feature as part of their own product. In fact, right now I am working with one of the teams where we are decommissioning Jenkins and bringing in all the builds that we have been running out of Jenkins to Bitbucket itself. Right. So this is like, again, consolidating stuff into one tool. So DevOps, this is one more principle of DevOps. That is, while we recommend using tools, we also should look at tools that, one, can work together seamlessly. Two, reduce the footprint of the tools if the features are already exist in one or the other, right? So that's about the code part of it. And Jira is one of the famous tools for a number of things. There are people who use it for testing. There are people who use it for tracking their tickets. Jira is actually a big part of Agile, and I hope you'll get to hear about it tomorrow. Another extension to Jira is Confluence. Confluence is another tool that's actually built by the company that built Jira as well. It's a huge a boon to collaboration, right? Documenting your requirements, your architectures, your schedules, your reports. So Confluence is something that works with Jira. It integrates it very well. In fact, Bitbucket, Jira, Confluence, they all work with each other so nicely that most of the teams, especially the startups or small companies, they tend to use this a lot. And of course, there's no so does large organizations. We talked about Jenkins. I mentioned briefly about Jenkins. Jenkins, I'm sure some of you would have, I hope all of you or most of you would have heard about it or used it. So that's where all the code comes in together, right? So we create the different builds that we want to ultimately deploy. And this is again one of the principles of DevOps: test often, run often as possible, which is in some organizations, they run every merge. Some organizations run the builds every PR approve. Some organizations run PR submit. So it's essentially how agile your code is, or how nimble your code is, or how self-sufficient your code that you're checking in is. Like, for example, we get to hear some crazy numbers from Googles of the world, Amazons of the world, Netflix. Recently, the guy who takes the cake is Netflix. Sorry, not Netflix, LinkedIn. I heard somewhere that they run one build a minute. It's a nightmare for anyone to even imagine an attempt at doing something like this. Imagine the amount of automation that must have happened there, right? From the code review, pull request creation, code review, merge to their tests and their deployments. Just imagine how seamless that entire train or a pipeline is. And of course, Amazon is another animal altogether. So at least in the case of LinkedIn's of the world or Netflix of the world, these are the Googles of the, these are some of the companies which have the history or a habit of deploying multiple times, even in a minute. So I just talked about one of my friends who's going to do a deployment for the next 3 weeks. Just compare this, right? So there are worlds that exists on the left who take 3 weeks to deploy, and there are companies such as this that deploy every other minute. Then comes the cloud solutions, which are AWS, Azure, VM, and I don't see Google here for some reason. Google, the PCF, and so on and so forth. So it enables us to do the environment provisioning fast, environment provisioning at will, on demand. So that's some of the advantages or DevOps principles that we recommend, suggest. And on the right side of it, There's a whole suite of tools that are used for monitoring. AppDynamics is AppDynamics is one of the famous ones, and IBM, yeah. So what it does, these things are plugged into the systems real time, plugged into the components of an architecture at real time, and they give us a lens view of what's happening per transaction. I mean, it's entirely up to us how we want to use any of these tools. We can configure them to an extent of how did a specific SQL perform when a hit happened. By hit, I mean, let's say a transaction happened or a query happened. To an extent of how did a specific block perform and which blocks take more time. And we talk about the end-to-end transactions, right? So from a customer initiating an action on the UI, and it goes all the way back to the data in whatever shape form the data is managed, maintained, and then there is a travel back to the UI to give the user the experience of whatever he asked for a request for, right? So each block of this is configured with all these monitoring tools, and we look at from their memory to their CPU to their code optimization part of it to their sequels and so on and so forth. So that's again one of the DevOps principles, that is that we should be able to take a look at what's happening to an architecture, and the architecture should be that flexible and it should be that easy to be able to be plugged into and looked into, so that one can know what's going on at real time. And something that's not mentioned here, but another huge role that it plays into having a successful DevOps is the testing part. Testing is one of the important functions, to say the least. So, and there are different ways people do testing, right? So, I mean, I run testing as well as part of my responsibilities. And we talk about functional automation, performance, security, chaos. And there's so much to it, and each one has its own purpose, and each one plays a part, and we pick and choose what to do and what not to do for a given release. Not every release we get to do every testing, and again, to do on every testing, there are tools to do it, and there are manual way of doing it. So that's a strategy that we put together, right? So yeah, so this is a typical DevOps or DevSecOps tool footprint, so to say. Again, this is not it. It's just sample, right? There are a lot of tools that I don't even know that exists. They still do things. So when we go into each client, each team, when we sit with them to talk to them to understand where they are in the spectrum of their DevOps journey, they may be absolutely at a 0.0 or maybe somewhere in the 40%, 30%, or maybe at 90%, right? So when we sit and talk to them, sometimes we get surprised. Sometimes it's funny. Sometimes it's irony. But again, end of the day, we sit with them to understand what's their journey and where do they want to go in achieving the DevOps. And these are some of the tools that helps us. And what I was talking about so far are some of the design principles when it comes to DevOps to achieve it. So we are at 7:18. I'll stop now and see if there are any questions, and probably any questions, any discussions, probably we'll use that to kind of wind up the session. Is that okay, sir? Sir, is that okay? Yeah. I mean, if any of you want to reach me, you can reach me, and I don't know, if time permits, we can still have more conversations. Like I said, I have a lot of other slides as well that talk about the design, the framework, the tools. This is the little more in-depth view of what we saw before. These are a lot more spectrum, lot more tools, and categorized into different segmentations of a DevOps chain. So yeah, Oh yeah, I forgot to mention about the virtualization part of it. Well, we don't have time, but while I wait for questions, so do let me know if anyone is asking questions in the comment section. I'm not looking at the comments. So virtualization plays a huge role in being able to deploy faster. Virtualization helps us to test without having to rely on dependencies. Virtualizations helps us to keep data or provision data faster. Test data is one of the, again, DevOps design principle that one need to keep in mind. Test data is one of the huge challenges. In my opinion, it's an unresolved challenge in any company right now. If somebody tells me that they've solved a test data problem, I'll be really surprised and would love to sit with them to listen to what they've done. So, and data security. By that I mean data masking, we sometimes scramble data, we sometimes mask data, we sometimes transform data to keep the security part of the data, because more often than not, in the non-production environment, like in the test environment, in the UAT environment, in the SIT environment, what the data that we get is pretty much coming from production. And by design or by definition, production data will have all the sensitive, super important personal information, which by no means should get into the hands of non-production users, such as developers, testers, support engineers. No, support engineers, one exception, the rest of the gang. So every company goes through this process of data scrambling. I mean, sometimes we totally change the data. Sometimes we mask a part of the data or a portion of the data so that the remaining will not make any sense to somebody, so that they can relate to any person or a entity that the company does business with. So test data management, test data masking is another very, very important topic under the DevOps realm or a framework. And virtualization plays a role into both test data provisioning, test data retaining, test data generation, and also what we call it as service virtualization. Oh, it's there. Okay, cool. So service virtualization, so which enables people to develop, test, deploy without having to worry about their dependencies. Like, for example, not for example, pretty much every system has dependencies, right? I don't think there is any application which is like a self-sufficient, which can live on all by itself. Like, if you're doing a transaction, there is an account lookup that you're supposed to do. There is a transaction verification that you're supposed to do. There's a data write or a commit to a table that you're supposed to do. But for someone who's testing a UI, who don't have to worry about any of this, having these services up and running for a UI developer in itself is very expensive in terms of time, in terms of money. So service virtualization plays a huge part to it, where the total interface gets virtualized, and the developer gets to write whatever he wants to write, the portion that he needs to write, or he or she needs to write. So with that, I'll pause for questions. Anyone has any questions? Any questions, any comments, anything that they may have read, you can share with me as well. I'm sure you are all reading things, I would assume, more often than most of us do. So something that I can take with me. Hariharan says, good evening. Good evening, sir. I hope it was to me. Application areas where DevOps is used. Can you be a little more specific, sir? Application areas, what do you mean application areas? Can you guess, sir? What is application area? Yes, I am from Tamil Nadu. I'm from Tirupattur. Medical imaging. Oh, okay. Okay. So DevOps, okay, I understand what you mean by now. Mean by application area. Okay. So DevOps, like I said, it is a framework. It is an approach, right? It is absolutely agnostic to your development process, the technology that you use, the sector that you are in. It is absolutely agnostic to any of this. So let's take an example of Facebook, which is a social media platform, and take the example of Netflix, which is a media content consumption provider platform. And let's talk about, let's say, Morgan Stanley, or Morgan Stanley is an investment bank, I think second or third largest investment bank in the United States, US. Or the one that I'm working for, it's a dealer financial services company. It's second largest North American dealer financial. Yeah, okay, there you go. So yeah, Facebook changed the name to Meta. Thanks for correction. So and of course, let's talk about Sun Pharma, which makes pharmaceutical stuff, right? Or Ford, which makes cars, or Byju's, which makes education content. So all these companies that are talked about, what is common? They have a platform to manage. They have a domain problem for which they write a software, and hence they have a platform to manage. Now, the moment they have a platform, obviously they have their end users, whether internal, external, and they need to be able to take their idea to the user as fast as possible. The late they are, they lose to their competition, right? So the faster they take their changes to the production, the users, they'll be successful. Now, DevOps helps them in this, in doing this. So what DevOps does is it helps any software company or any team which writes software in taking their changes to production, in taking their changes to the user as fast as possible for the team, right? So and hence, so DevOps is applicable pretty much to any application area. Thanks for this question. I hope I was clear. I hope that was useful. Jamil, Dr. Jamil. You're most welcome. Any other question? Any other question from anyone? Any technical question or any functional? I was hoping for a lot more interaction. Twenty-three 10 2021. DNS problem in Meta company. You need to help me understand the problem. I didn't get it. Are you talking about the day when WhatsApp went down? Hariharan? Oh, well, I don't know what's their internal system. See, at Facebook or at Meta, okay, I'll get to Kupusam in a minute. So Facebook is going through a lot of change right now, right? So you guys know about their cryptocurrency that they're gonna release, Libra, and they're also being chased down by at least 4 or 5 different companies for their security or privacy invasion issues. So Facebook is going through, yeah, it's all one platform at the end of the day. Facebook, Insta, WhatsApp, they don't run on the same platform, but it's driven by the same strategy or a similar strategy, so to say. So I don't think we'll ever come to know why WhatsApp went down on the day it went down. But I think it has a lot more to do with, it's only a guess. The reason why WhatsApp went down on the day has a lot more to do with some of the compliances, privacy invasion issues that Facebook is having as a firm than their technology problem. I don't think Facebook is a company or WhatsApp is a company that doesn't know how to solve a problem in 15 minutes time. So yeah, that's about it. So that's about all I know, in fact, about why it went down. And DevSecOps, like any other platform. No, it's not a platform. This is what I've been trying to say, right? So I mean, it's important to understand what's a platform. Facebook is a platform. Or Netflix is a platform. But DevOps is an idea. It's an approach. It's a framework, or it's what is agile, right? I mean, I hope some of you must have read about it. So I'm just taking this as a reference. Or maybe let's talk about software development lifecycle, right? This is something that's, I'm sure, common to everybody. So what we call as software development lifecycle, let's say waterfall model. So waterfall model is a development. It's an approach to how you can develop a software. It has it says here are the few things that you should do, and if you do these things, you will get a better software, right? So DevOps is like that. DevOps is essentially a principle or an approach, idea, framework, which says do these 4 or 5 things. If you do this, your deployment process will be smooth and your deployment process will be faster. That's what it is. So it's not a platform. So I hope that's clear. Karupasamy, I like that question. Thanks for asking that. So yeah, so DevOps is like, you can compare DevOps is like, let's say the object-oriented analysis and designs. What is that? Right? Oops, object-oriented programming. What is that? So these are a set of principles, ideas, suggestions, frameworks that are created by research guys, like some of you, to make, to help people like us to do our job easy, or to make our life easy, right? So end of the day, these are, so you can compare DevOps to SDLC, any SDLC. You can take Agile, or you can take Waterfall, you can Spiral, Iterative. You can take any of those SDLCs. DevOps is like that. It just talks about how you should manage your requirements, how you should manage your development, design things, where do you need to bring in your operations people, how can you integrate the requirement writing process, and how do you test your code by using unit tests, or by using functional tests, automation tests, so on and so forth, and how do you deploy it, and doing each of this, what kind of tools one can use. So that's all DevOps is. Long story short, DevOps is not a platform, it is an approach. It's a development model. Where it worked. So I didn't get that question. So are you asking where DevOps worked? Karupasamy? Well, I mean, assuming that's what your question is, I hope you're still there. It worked wherever we tried and did the right job, right? I don't know if I can take the names. Let's see. So I ran a team of like 40 people for a company called Fidelity. I don't know if you guys heard about it. So there we did a DevOps for them. It's still running what we what we built for them. And right now we are in the thick of building a DevSecOps platform. DevSecOps platform using number of tools. We are in the process of building one for one of our clients, like Bajaj Finance. It's not Bajaj Finance. It's like Bajaj Finance in the US. So we are building one for them, and we have built one for Royal Bank of Canada. We built one for we have huge customer list, right? I work for Capgemini, so there are a lot of success stories where we have successfully deployed DevOps using number of tools, and hence reduced the deployment time from months to days. So what used to take 3 weeks, 4 weeks deployment, we have reduced it to 4 days, 5 days, or even within a day. Could you brief about DevOps versus Data Ops? No, you need to tell me what Data Ops is first. What is Data Ops? Data Ops on data. Sorry, DevOps on data. Okay. No, actually data is part of DevOps. You cannot do DevOps without data. It doesn't work, right? So I mentioned it briefly, I think. Test data management is one of the important principles of DevOps. Data, again, empirically talking, data two ways, right? So one is the data in production and the data in non-production. So there are challenges in both places. And also the problem of data happens to projects where we talk about migration or technology upgrades. So it entirely depends on what type of what's the nature of problem that we are trying to solve using software. So you cannot separate data from DevOps. Data is one of the important principles of DevOps, so to say. It's managing data. More than that, managing test data, because DevOps is all about pre-production. Post-production is something that we don't talk. DevOps talks about the process up until we take the code to deployment, or the code we take up until the production. So in that context, we talk about test or a development data management, and it is one of the intrinsic part of DevOps. So it's not versus, it is inside DevOps. I talked about two things, right? So one is, no, not two, three things, right? So there's something called data generation, test data generation. There is something called test data provisioning. Generation is, I think, obvious, right? So anyone can understand what it means. You need to be able to generate the data that you need, which is very similar in nature to the production, so that you can test all the production scenarios in non-production. It's very, very important. Otherwise, the system is going to it's doomed to fail, right? So that's about test data generation. Now, test data provision is when you have more than one teams collaborating with each other, and there's always a hunt for test data. Now, when you have one test data management system, you need to be able to, or we need to be able to provision data to the teams as they want. More importantly, don't step on each other. Like for example, when I am, let's say, think of a scenario, right? You need to create an account. Let's say you have to test this. You have to develop this and you need to test this. So when you test an account creation, you need to do a customer creation. That's how it always happens. You first create the customer, then you create the account, and then you can do the transaction on an account. If you think of let's say a banking system, put it simply, there's a lot more goes into it. I'm just trying to make it simple. Now, without having a customer created, you cannot do account creation. So now customer creation for a guy who is either doing a development or a testing for a account creation is test data generation. Now test data provision is that you need to make sure that somebody else just pick that customer that you created for the account creation guy to randomly just fund the account. Because once you do that, the account creation guy will not be able to use that test data, the customer test data, to create the account, because that account will become an existing customer. So there are so many scenarios and so many problems that one will not be able to even test it out. So test data provision is super important. Now, third is the the security part of it, which is, like I said, I think during the session, it's very, very difficult to orchestrate all the different real-time test data needs in a non-production environment. So what we do is we go to production and bring down the data and refresh non-production environments from production. Now, when we do that, you're gonna actually bring in the real customer names, their phone numbers, their addresses, their account numbers. It is a huge privacy intrusion. If something like this happen, the companies get closed for problems like this, right? So so we pay huge money and attention to make sure private information such as this doesn't go down. Like for example, we kind of decouple the information. Like, so we may bring down, let's say, my name and my email ID from a production system to non-production system. While we bring it down, we decouple it. That is, my email ID will become some garbage at gmail.com with my first name. So now you combine these two information, you'll not be able to make out whether this person is real or not. So things like this, right? And in some cases, like for example, social security, or in our case, it's Aadhaar. Aadhaar is a very, very private information, and it exists in production. When you bring it down, you cannot not have full number, but at the same time, you cannot bring in the actual number also. So what we do, we just generate a garbage number. So there are systems that we write for that. So it just replaces all the let's say the Aadhaar numbers of all the customers when we bring down from the production to the non-production, things like this. So I mean, I can keep talking. So data is actually one of the like I said, intrinsic, integral, important part of implementing DevOps the right way. Thanks for the question. It was a good question. What skills are needed for DevOps, sir? It's a okay, let's look at it. So DevOps as a skill, it has different skills to it, right? So DevOps is not one skill. So there is a DevOps designer or a DevOps architect. So somebody like me who just go into the system and see we create a solution. But then it's not just about the architect. So to do the correct DevOps, we need a very good cloud architect. We need a very good automation testing team, automation tester. We need a very good performance tester. We need a very good, very good application monitoring guy. So DevOps is not one skill, and I don't think there is one person who can do all in DevOps. No, it's just not practical. So look at the streams that we talked about so far, right? So DevOps includes a developer, who can write a clean code with an unit test code in it, right? And DevOps needs a very good tester who can not just test things manually, also should be able to write automated tests so that the testing can happen faster. DevOps needs a person who can enable cloud deployment so that a code that was developed by somebody else, a code that was tested by somebody else, can be deployed onto the cloud. There's an integration happens seamlessly. DevOps also needs a database design, database SQL developers, and so on and so forth. Whatever. It actually depends on the project. Again, if you need one, if you need one, if you don't need one, don't need one. So it's not one skill. So, but again, at an architect level, for a DevOps architect, one needs a complete understanding of complete landscape of software development processes, actually, more than one, and the different tools that go into each phase, which one suits best in a given environment. Because not Bitbucket is a perfect solution for every company to do a code configuration. No. Or Selenium, probably this is one of the famous test automation tools. Selenium is not necessarily a correct tool for every type of application. No. UDeploy is not necessarily a deployment tool for every type of application. Jenkins is not necessarily a CI/CD tool that's suitable for every type. For example, SQLs and all, you cannot even do any deployment using CI/CD. You have to write a lot of custom code before you can deploy. You can use Jenkins. So that type of knowledge is what is needed to be a DevOps architect. But once we go down, it's not just one person. It's a whole lot of skill and a whole lot of tools. So you can pick and choose where you want to specialize in the spectrum of DevOps. Agile and DevOps are similar? No. You can compare that as an approach just to understand the approach. But Agile is an enabler for DevOps. Like cloud is an enabler for DevOps. Can you do DevOps without Agile? Totally yes. But Agile can help you do DevOps in some instances. So yeah, so now these are some of the finer, that's a beautiful question actually. These are some of the fine prints of, this is the work of architecture, the question, answer to your question. So that's the question that I get actually from the clients. Now I have Agile in my team. Does that mean I have DevOps? No. Now, can I do DevOps without Agile? Yes. Now, then does that mean the Agile that I'm using is useless to DevOps? No, it's not like that. So Agile is an enabler to DevOps. So look at Agile, right? So I'll, because you're going to have a separate session. So Agile helps you to visualize software development in a certain way, such that you instead of having a big lunch, you make a piecemeal out of it, right? How can you break down a large software into a smaller pieces that is one usable to deployable, right? So the usable is what Agile addresses. Deployable is what DevOps does. Now, usable doesn't mean deployable, and it's the vice versa as well. Deployable doesn't mean usable, right? So I can totally deploy something that is not useful for anybody. So, and I'm still using DevOps. I'm still doing DevOps because that's all DevOps is. DevOps, the idea is DevOps is whatever I have written, I need to be able to deploy faster, right? So one, I need to write something such a way that I can deploy faster. That's where Agile comes in. I hope I made sense. I hope I didn't confuse you. So long story short, they are not similar, but one enables the other. So Agile helps DevOps. H1 or for student visa? I'll explain you, Hariharan, maybe towards the end. I'm happy to explain you that. I'll explain you. Which software used for DevOps? We just talked about it. I think my slide that I'm currently sharing, that has some of the softwares that are used for DevOps. I hope by software you mean tools. So yeah. So the screen that I'm sharing right now, that has some of the names of the tools or softwares in your word. I won't say software, I'll rather say tool. So those are used for DevOps. Any other questions? And Karupusami, if you ask me specifically to do what, I can tell you, because for DevOps, like I said, there are a lot of softwares, lot of tools used for different purposes and different streams. So if you have a question about something specific, I can answer you. But if you want to know all of the software or possible softwares, the screen that I'm sharing right now, it has some of them. Good luck, Hariharan. Any other question? Yes, absolutely yes. Like Agile, cloud is one of the enabler for DevOps. Does that mean I can do? Does that mean cloud is absolutely essential? I mean, the other way. Let me put it the negative connotation way. So, when I say cloud is an enabler for DevOps, does that mean I cannot do DevOps without cloud? No, it's not like that. But cloud makes things fast because cloud solves the problem of environment, right? The environment provisioning. Like for example, let's say we're going to deploy a software and it needs an additional let's say 1 gig of memory for an additional data that we are likely to migrate. If we were to do it on a typical data center, then there is a request to extend the memory needs to be put in, and there is this whole vendor thing, buy it, and then somebody needs to install it, test it, and so on and so forth. Then you deploy everything, right? So it takes its own time. Now, how do we manage a team is completely different story. But because we have to extend this hardware, can delay your deployment process. Now, if you bring it onto cloud is just one API call. We can expand the memory. And in my opinion, it's less expensive as well. So yeah, cloud helps or enables DevOps, but it's a sufficient condition, not a necessary condition. Cloud. How to handle the clients in IT field? Come to IT field, you will understand. Are you a student or a professor? Is he a student or professor? Okay, come to the field, you will understand it. Student, excellent. So come to the field, you will understand it. That's exact. I mean, how do you handle a client? Exactly the same way you handle the professors, your mom, dad, your fellow friends. So you'll get to see pretty much every character out there. DevOps used web development. Absolutely, yes. Yeah. Not just web, everywhere. Like I said, it doesn't matter the technology, sector.
Hello.
Pretty much all of this are. Hi. So you can do DevOps pretty much everywhere, including web. Any other questions? You're most welcome, Jagdish. So, would you like me to leave my email ID or something for any of these cases? How to be survive in IT fields? Yes. You do your job right, you'll survive, my friend. I'll leave my email address with you, Dennis sir. You can put it in the group. If any of them want to contact me, they can reach me for any further questions on DevOps or in fact, any other topic as well. I'll try to catch up with tomorrow's session. Just for the sake of meeting the speaker. He's my senior. So yeah. Anthony Willett, right? Tomorrow? Yeah. Okay. So it's 7:56. So last 4 minutes. We can wind up at 8, okay? Or is it already late? Okay. Yeah, I'll leave it up to you.
I think we have come to the end. Dear participants, we have had productive and inspiring time together. I hope you have found that presentation is informative and helpful. On this occasion, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Parthiban for his presence and contribution to make this today's webinar a great success. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Tomorrow, the session starts sharply at 6:30 p.m. Thanks again for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity, sir.